Berwick-upon-Tweed, a town steeped in history, the scene of so many wars throughout the centuries. But could this town, once so violent, now so peaceful, harbour a secret war that has been going on for more than a century? Could the famous legend, the famous factoid and piece of trivia, that Berwick is still at war with Russia really be true? It's repeated on the internet by word of mouth, by famous comedians in their game shows, by journalists in need of a silly story. But surely it could not be true. Or could the legend conceal a greater, deeper truth? Let us look at the facts. It is a fact that in 1502 Henry VII of England concluded a treaty with the Scots, a treaty of perpetual peace with King James IV. In that treaty, Berwick was defined as in the Kingdom of England, but not of the Kingdom of England. Berwick thus was a law unto itself, separately mentioned in all the laws of England. The story is that in 1854, the Crimean War was declared on behalf of England, Scotland, Ireland and Berwick-upon-Tweed. But when it came to the peace treaty in 1856, the delegates were distracted, and Berwick was accidentally missed off. So while Britain was at peace, Berwick fought on alone. If so, when did the Tsarist ship sail into the harbour? When did the Soviet tanks roll up the high street? That Berwick had not signed the treaty was, it is said, spotted in 1966. Then the mayor played host to the Russian ambassador and signed a peace treaty. Then the mayor declared,
"Mr. Ambassador, please go back to your great country and tell the Russian people that they can now sleep easy in their beds."
The new research for this film has discovered that this recording is a forgery. There was no civic meeting. There was no Russian ambassador. There is no trace of the mayor meeting the Russian ambassador in 1966. So if this meeting is untrue, what are the rest of the legend? This is equally false. Both the Crimean War and the peace treaty didn't mention Berwick. And even if Berwick had been missed off, it would not have mattered. The Berwick and Wales Act of 1747 specified that any mention of England also included Berwick and Wales. There was no war. But how could such a legend arise? Let us look at the man who first made that mistake. This is thought to be the only footage of him. Sir William Augustus Chichester, maverick scholar of independent means, an expert in Slavonic and East European languages, a personal friend of the last Tsar of Russia. Chichester travelled from the Urals to Tibet, his huge wealth lavished on endless quest to solve the mysteries of the East, the Tunguska explosion, the mysteries of Tibet, and most mysterious of all, the legends of the Holy Grail.
I never knew a man that knew so much about the East. You know, there was never a subject that you might mention that he didn't know something about. Mind you, some of it went against the grain. I mean, some of it was rejected by the other scholars. But interesting. I'll say it was.
It was William Chichester who, in about 1905, first said that Berwick had been at war with Russia since the Crimea. And it was in 1905 that Sir William, with all the world to choose from, came to live in Berwick-on-Tweed. He came here to Castle Hill's house, now definitely off limits to camera. Today it is owned by the CMH, or Conventus Memoriae Historiae, otherwise known as the Congregation for the Memorializing of History, a shadowy organisation dedicated to uncovering what they call the true history of Berwick. Gradually they are acquiring and preserving historic buildings, such as this, the main guardhouse, and this, the house of the painter Thomas Sword Good. Though he moved to Castle Hills in 1905, within a few years William Chichester had moved here, to the centre of Berwick, while still retaining ownership of the other house. Why should he do such a thing? Again there is a mystery. Again there are questions. The greatest question of all concerns his death in 1962. In 1962, Pope John XXIII called a great council to modernise the church, now known as Vatican II. As a lifelong devout Catholic and an expert on comparative religion, Chichester was invited to Rome as an advisor, but it was not to be. On the morning of the opening session, Sir William collapsed and died on the steps of St. Peter's. His death has never really been explained. Sir William's second house in Berwick remained unoccupied for several years, until one night in 1966, when neighbours were woken up by sounds of crashes coming from the empty house.
I was quite young at the time, but I remember that the whole house shook with a terrible noise, and then there was the sound of ripping wood. Well, we knew that the old man had died some years ago, and that nobody else had moved in, so naturally we were suspicious.
Eventually the police were called and they discovered a scene of devastation.
The house was a scene of devastation. The furniture had been torn apart. Panels had been ripped off the walls, and the walls probed. The extent of the damage was extensive, as if it had been done professionally by a gang who had gone in and torn the place apart. It appeared that nothing had been taken, which was very unusual. They may have been looking for something, but I have no idea what it was.
So who was this gang and what were they looking for? A clue lies in what was Sir William's lifelong interest.
If I was asked to sum up Sir William's career, well, he only had one obsession, really. The Holy Grail. Now, I know there's a lot of nonsense being spoken these days about the Holy Grail, particularly by that poor American. What was his name? You know, the one that was shot by the police in Westminster Abbey because they thought he was carrying a chemical bomb. Turned out to be vinegar. Langton, that was his name. Robert Langton. But you see, even he didn't realise what Sir William had discovered, that there was an Eastern Grail tradition. And if Sir William had found the Grail, well, he didn't tell me about it. That's a pity.
So, had Sir William Chichester discovered the Holy Grail in the East, and perhaps brought it to Berwick? And was this what the gang was seeking, whoever they were? Well, we thought the trail might end here with these questions, but then we were contacted by a local builder who wished to remain anonymous. He had an amazing story to tell.
Well, after the house was broken into, my dad's firm were employed to renovate it for the new owners. Well, lads were taking down an internal wall when they discovered a box in a specially built hiding place. Wasn't much in the box, but a load of old diaries. Lads almost threw them away, but they gave them to my dad. Then some men turned up and asked about them. Word had got around the town. Dad thought they were from the church, but it turned out they were local historians, or so they said. They offered to buy the diaries for a lot of money, so Dad sold them, and they took them off. I've no idea where they are now.
If they were not from the church, could the buyers of the diaries be the Congregation for the Memorialising of History? We do not know, as the organisation never give interviews. Again, the trail seemed cold, but then the builder told us a remarkable thing.
Well, I haven't thought about it for years, but I think my dad said he photocopied some of the diaries. It was in the early days of photocopying, I think. A friend of his had one of the first in Berwick, and they needed something to try it on. If I can find you them, you can have them. There's a price, of course.
We, of course, agreed a price and took charge of the yellowing photostats. Whole sections of Sir William's diaries were reproduced. Some of it was an intricate letter code, but we put expert decoders on the case, and the story we can now reveal is quite remarkable. What Sir William discovered was that the Grail had stayed in the East. It had never come to Europe in the Middle Ages. From Jerusalem it had come here to the castle of Tak-i-Takis in Iran. From there it was stolen by 3 adventurers, who used it to bribe their way into the favour of Tsar Ivan the Terrible. It was he who discovered the Grail's power, and it was used by the Tsars to exert a secret power over the Russian people, helping them to put down revolts. In 1854, when the Crimea was invaded by Britain and France, The Grail was sent there to help repel the invaders, but the city fell, and the Grail was collected as a souvenir by a Scottish soldier. Is this a picture of him holding the Grail? He brought it back and hid it somewhere in Berwick. It was for this reason that Sir William moved to the town in 1905, hoping to find the object and return it to his friends, the Russian royal family. It was for this reason that he quipped that Russia had been at war with Berwick since the Crimea. But Sir William had still not discovered the hiding place when the Russian Revolution broke out, and his friends, the imperial family, were in dreadful danger. At this time, this man, Thomas Boston, had strong trade links with Russia. He regularly exported herrings from Berwick to Russia. It seems it was on one of Thomas Boston's herring boats that in 1917 the Tsar's family was smuggled out of St. Petersburg and brought to Berwick's Scar Rock. Was it on this obscure quayside that the course of history was changed? Sir William moved out of Castle Hills that same year, and here it seems the imperial family lived in secret for at least a decade. This photo is said to show the Russian princesses in 1921, 3 years after their supposed assassination. Was it taken at Castle Hills? The final twist came in 1928, when Edward, Prince of Wales, came to Berwick to open the Royal Border Bridge. According to Sir William diaries, after the official ceremonies were over, the dashing prince visited Castle Hills and instantly fell in love with one of the princesses. Was this the moment that the love-sick prince noticed his lover? Was a child born from this relationship? A child who was heir to the thrones of Britain and Russia? What happened to that child? What happened to the imperial family? The investigation continues.